Hey everybody, Jeremy Price from the Herald-Times here, filling in for the on assignment Mike Miller in Hawaii today, and with me as usual, HT columnist Andy Graham.
Yeah, Jeremy and I are both just thawing out from yesterday when he was on top of a trailer covering IU soccer in Westfield, my hometown. Westfield's a place that, anyway, it was cold yesterday. I'll just leave it at that. And then I covered regional football in an open air press box, or at least the window was in front of me was open last night. And as far as I know, is Mike still at the beach? Is he on the way back yet?
I don't know. He might be staying for a while.
Yeah, I think the sand is still tickling his toes. But we're here in nice crisp conditions in the press box here after a game against a winnable game against a ranked team got away from Indiana late, but they sure had a shot in this one.
Yeah, speaking of open windows, I guess there was an open window of opportunity for Indiana today to pull off the upset, to nail down bowl eligibility, do all those things, and all those things basically got away from Indiana in a 45-31 loss to number 12 Penn State, and this game was sort of all over the place, really. Mm-hmm. You look at the first half, it was really missed opportunities and mistakes by Indiana that was really the story. Wound up 14-14 at halftime, but really seemed like Indiana could have had control of the game by that point, but for those mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana lost 4 fumbles in the first half alone, and that's usually fatal when you're playing a team of the caliber of Penn State. But Indiana really hung in there. Indiana really outplayed the Nittany Lions for the first half, really for much of the game, to my mind. But we're able to forge a 14-14 tie set up when Penn State made a turnover. Rashard Fan had a nice interception that set up an IU touchdown late in the half. So they went into halftime tied with a chance to get the ball to start the third quarter. Went down and kicked a field goal. That was a positive for Indiana today. Got a nice boot out of Griffin Oaks, who looked much more comfortable. Had Mitchell Page holding for him again. And it was 48 yards?
47-yard field goal for Oaks, yeah.
And so that was a positive sign. So Indiana took the lead, then got up by 10 points. And they did so by rather entertainingly, in my view, going against tendencies. They had the Wildcat formation on the field with featuring Tyler Natee and Xander Diamont, which normally portends a rush-heavy attack. And after a couple of Natee runs, it produced a first down. All of a sudden, Xander Diamont fades back and unleashes a 52-yard bomb to Kemiah Patrick, which set up Indiana. Then when it was 2nd and goal from the 6, Indiana put in Richard Lego again and went to a spread, which seemed to indicate a pass was coming, but instead they handed off to Divine Redding. He basically walked in from the 6. So it was effective, when they kind of went against tendencies there. But I thought the key juncture, the real swinging point in the game came after Penn State had closed to within 3. Penn State had taken the lead back. After 24-10, Penn State had gone ahead 28-24, was starting to throw against an Indiana defense that had so successfully bottled up Saquon Barkley, a great back, and the running attack. Mm-hmm. They finally started making them pay for that by hitting passes downfield. They score a couple of TDs, but then Indiana retakes the lead by Lego really in a pass-happy drive, goes down, and it's capped by a 40-yarder to Nick Westbrook, who was wide open on a double move, basically called by this guy, by the way. He was saying the way Penn State's DBs are jumping routes, at some point Indiana should do a double move and could probably get him, and they got him. And so I thought that that was Indiana had retaken the lead. The defense came up with a nice stop, and Penn State punted it in the end zone. IU's got 1st and 10 on its 20, a 3-point lead. Penn State's offense has started to kind of get their act together. So you're thinking, well, with 8 minutes to play, Indiana's probably going to need another score if it wants to win the game. And instead, they bring the Wildcat out and they run it right up the middle, which is what teams are expecting. They not only pretty much got stuffed. There was a holding call on Wes Martin. I felt Wes Martin doesn't get many holding calls, but he got one today. That set him back, but even on 1st and 20, they ran Natee up the middle and only gained a yard. And all of a sudden, a really crucial possession was bogging down, and pretty much the game swung right there, I thought.
Yeah, was yet another one of those games. Really, we've seen this all season where there's a lot of ebbs and flows and a lot of decisions that Indiana has to make that ultimately have an impact on the game. And while you're absolutely right, those fourth quarter decisions and those drives certainly tilted the momentum of the game at those junctures. I'd be remiss if we didn't go back to that third quarter where Indiana went up 17-14. And before they scored that touchdown to go up 24-14, they had another drive in there where they went for it on fourth down at the 1 yard line.
Right.
And in retrospect, again, you wonder, should Indiana have taken those points there? Was that the right decision? They actually had the wild bacon formation in initially on that fourth down play, called timeout, went back to Richard Lego, rollout play, which they had scored on earlier, unsuccessfully this time. And of course, at that point, defense was playing well. There was reason to believe they could pin them back, which they didn't do. They kind of let them out of jail, but then they still ultimately forced a punt and then go down and score that touchdown to go up 10. But it was just kind of one of those days where there were just little possessions, little plays here and there that you could go back and point to as saying, if something different had happened, how might this game have turned out?
I agree totally, and there were a lot of missed opportunities in the first half as well. I mean, the defense kept setting the offense up to score, and then the offense kept malfunctioning, and usually with lost fumbles or some other kind of mistake. One of the Penn State touchdowns in the first half was set up by a punt that went off the foot of an Indiana blocker. A guy, Isaac James, was peeling back to block, and it's just one of those unfortunate things that happens occasionally. But Indiana made too many mistakes offensively in other areas, but the defense was playing well, which is one of the reasons why I didn't really mind that call going in for fourth down on fourth, and it was about 1.5 yards that they needed. If you don't make it, you turn it over on the 1.5. The defense has been playing very well, and they did in fact get a stop. I mean, Penn State was able to flip the field a little bit, but still, it didn't really cost Indiana anything other than 3 points. I mean, they presumably would have gotten the field goal had they gone for it. Getting a touchdown there would have been a big momentum thing too. And I thought this was one of those days when I said this in my column. To me, it was a go for the gusto day. I mean, I would have been doing that all day. It's like fourth from the 1. If we get our defense is playing well. If we get 7, it's a big deal. So I'm going to go for it. Indiana hasn't been very good on fourth down, but as you say, that type of play had worked earlier, and it had a chance to work there. The kid made a nice play, dived and deflected the ball. There were some fourth down plays for Indiana today where Penn State knocked the ball down at the line. Where plays were open and the slant was there probably, but the ball never got there. But I like taking chances when you're playing the team that's ranked number 10 and the college football championship standings. They're ranked number 12 in AP, but they're a top 10 team by the standings that really matter.
Right.
All right. And you got a chance to beat them at home. You got a nice crowd. The crowd stays around. Crowd's in the game. Pretty good ball game. To me, it's like, let it all hang out. It's like, let's stay aggressive. Let's go get it would be my attitude in terms. So I think there's a case to be made definitely on both sides of that play call, whether to go for it on fourth down right at the goal line. I was in favor of, let's if I'm Indiana, I go ahead and try and score there. Let's try to score 6 instead of try to score 7 instead of just 3.
So play calling and decisions aside, we can all play second guess with that. Indiana did avoid the turnover throughout the second half up until the final minute. After turning the ball over on downs, was able to hold Penn State to a field goal. So one last gasp for Indiana, and I guess it sort of came full circle, really. Fittingly, Richard Lego sacked, stripped. Penn State recovers the fumble, runs it in for a touchdown.
Yeah. Without the scoop and score, I mean, the final margin is misleading. Clearly, Indiana had more first downs. They had more yards. They had 16 tackles for loss from its front people. In fact, some of the secondary guys coming through too. But 16 tackles for loss, which is believed to tie the school record that was set in 1998, I think it was.
Yes.
Against Minnesota. So there were still a lot of encouraging things for Indiana fans to take away from today. But they've had a lot of chances the last couple of years playing a ranked team at home. Really got a chance to knock them off. Have a chance to really galvanize the fan base. They did that once this year with Michigan State, but it turned out to be a win that since has been the status of which has been undermined because Michigan State has struggled so severely since then. It was almost like losing that game kind of blew their brains or something. They just haven't played well. They played well today, apparently, but nevertheless, this was a chance to really get fans excited. A chance to get a 6th win, be bowl eligible, set yourself up to have potentially the first winning season in Kevin Wilson's tenure here. It's going to be more difficult now because it's at the Big House next week.
Yeah, so 2 games remaining in the regular season. Indiana still 1 win shy of that bowl eligibility mark. Michigan and Purdue, the 2 remaining games. I think it's obvious which one of those is the more attainable game of that bunch.
Right.
But Hoosiers head to Ann Arbor next week. Again today, they show themselves to be competitive with a top-notch team. I think probably maybe more than at any point this season, that game at Ann Arbor will be a test to see if Indiana can be competitive against a team like that on the road.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan might be the best team in the country. I mean, they're right there. Alabama maybe is, maybe there are other teams that are, but they're right there. You can make a case for them as pretty much as well as anybody. Indiana played them really tough down here last year, a double overtime game.
Right.
And one thing that I think Indiana fans can take away from today, and I think it's just becoming demonstrably true. I mean, Penn State scored 45 points today, but that's very misleading. Indiana has a better defense. They have a good defense. I mean, it's not merely an adequate defense. It's a good defense. Mm-hmm. And I think that, as much as anything, is something that Indiana fans can take away from this season, whatever else happens, however it turns out, as being a major step forward for the program.
So this one leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in the mouth, but as we said, 2 games remaining. A lot of things still in play for Indiana. Mike and Andy will see you next week in Ann Arbor, and that'll do it for us this afternoon at Memorial Stadium.
Thanks, boys.
See ya.